Good evening, everyone. Let's head into Let's Go Help 2. There aren't a ton of us yet, but we are on a time constraint today as there is another class coming right after ours. All right. And so now get everything with all these crazy toolbars set up. And there we go. So I was out in the yard already today because we are getting rid of some problem aspen that were here on the property. I wasn't sure when we were going to be able to do it. I thought they'd have to bring a crane in. There were probably close to 15 aspen if you counted the actual trees that had branched off from the trunks at the bottom. And aspen grows very prolifically. They have all of the family that aspen are, I believe, at least a lot of them. They spread out runners like a strawberry plant or a blackberry vine, and they're one single organism. So though there were 15 standing trees or so in the yard, it was really only one plant, and they were beautiful. It was like living in a small forest, and it was glorious. But because of that root structure, they have already gone through the whole yard. They're trying to go into the backyard, and they will destroy wiring, plumbing, all of that type of stuff. They'll start working at the foundation of the house. And every time we mow our yard, because those little trees are coming up in the yard, when you cut that bark, if you go so deep, even if you just nick it, like you're out there shoveling and you just accidentally chunk a tree with your shovel, it sends a signal to that tree to start protecting itself and sending out more roots. So now that the trees are gone, we're going to actually care into them. I have a tool that's actually a survival tool that you create a little stove out of a chunk of wood. You drill down close to the side, about this far away from the side of your little stump of wood. And then you drill down in, and then you drill in from the side so that they make an L inside that stump, and then you fill it with kindling and you light it, and it creates an instant little stove. You can cook on it, all these great things. And I'm going to use it to drill into each of those stumps, and I'm going to put Dawn, water, vinegar, and because these are really, really bad, really very strong, incredibly good at surviving trees, salt. And of course, typically people would probably use something like Roundup. I don't like lab created chemical intervention. Dawn is not obviously a natural substance. You can't go and pick it from a plant or dig it out of the ground even, but it's a soft lab created kind of a chemical, and one that they use to wash animals that have been harmed by oil spills and things like that. So it's more towards that natural oriented thought process. Now they are finding that it does have some harm even when cleaning these creatures. I had always wondered, it's just so anti natural creatures cleansing processes, right? But saving them is better than not. So it's still a chemical. Vinegar actually can occur in the wild. It's rare, but it can, just like alcohol can randomly occur in, say, like an orange that has been opened up and then sealed. Alcohol can actually become a part of that fruit, and sometimes deer consume it and get a little drunk. It's kind of fun, or kind of funny. It's probably not very fun for them. Although some animals will find things like if someone is trying to be sneaky and they're growing cannabis in the woods, if animals find it, sometimes they return to it on purpose. They like the effect a little bit. So kind of funny stuff, but out there in the outdoor world, and I thought it would be kind of fun to come with my hat on, since when I'm out in the garden, if I don't have anything too detailed going on with my hair, I definitely throw this on to keep my face, my neck, and my ears out of the sun. My dad's already had to have benign cancerous growths removed from his ears because he's an electrician, and so he's outdoors all of the time working. And when I always pull my hair back in a ponytail, I used to wear it down quite a lot, and I didn't have to worry about it as much. But curls, man, you gotta pull it back. So I've got to protect myself out there a little bit. All right, guys. So I just thought I'd lead in since it was all kind of a country topic and a little bit interesting. And now let's open up the floor to any country living and business or pet questions that you may have. We'll head down here in our contents menu to the Join Us Live collection. All right, it's a little bit confusing in a way because we are in teaching sessions. That's where this class has always been. We've had it for, probably at least 6 months or so. And we didn't have pets on it then. It was just country living and business. However, we needed to get some country and some pet information into our Unlock Your Goals area here. And Matthew has always looked at pets as part of our family. So he includes pet care in healthcare. And I really can't fault his reasoning there. I certainly consider my animals a part of my family. And so our pet care materials will be in the healthcare assistance space in the Unlock Your Goals collection. And our country living and business is in the Start My Business space. Though it is geared towards business, we can certainly get to rural living if you're not interested in business, but you are in the rural areas. We can get there through the material in the Start My Business space. So we are in teaching sessions as it doesn't really fit with the areas for calls, but we're going to use the material out of the Unlock Your Goals collection, which is where we're going to host all of our material. While the reports will still be available, all of these different pieces that we use to answer your questions, they're all going to still be there. The Unlock Your Goals collection is going to hold all of those main topics. Consider the Lesko Meta Grants report, the 31 topics in there. Most of those topics are going to in some way or shape be put into the Unlock Your Goals collection, into that beautiful step-by-step format that Julia May takes all of Matthew's materials in his big picture vision and puts it into such user-friendly, beautiful pieces that are so well explained. All right, so here we are in the teaching session space, and I'm going to go ahead and close up that internal menu because we don't need it and it adds to the clutter. And we're going to jump into the Community Answers tab here in Teaching Sessions, which is in the Join Us Live collection. In the Community Answers tab is where I'm going to leave all of your answers. But don't worry if that sounded like a bunch of jumbled words. I will give you 2 quick questions at the end of placing your answers here and make sure that you're comfortable getting to these answers. All right? So we have a really small class, kind of a not so general topic, right? Country. Pets is a little more general. If you have a question, please go ahead and just unmute yourself and shout it out. So we have Mr. Benny here with us, one of our regulars and an honorary member of our volunteer squad there. Haiti, I've gotten to work with you a few times. Otis Dean, nice to see you. Sean, I may have or may have not worked with you in the past. It's kind of hard with just one name. Violeta, I don't think we've worked together before either. I would love to answer any questions that you have, especially about country living and business. Most of our topic-based classes, we really try to stay on track. However, as this isn't the most common need, if someone has another question, I generally go ahead and answer that as well. So please, go ahead, ask a question, guys. That's what we're here to do, is get you out there, get you what you need, make sure you have an application or some contact information in hand, ready to start working on finding funding for your goals and challenges. Well, I can certainly fill the air about country living and business. I don't ever have a problem with that. So one of the things that we're going to do, obviously it costs money to get these trees cut down. They were literally up to 40 feet tall, possibly taller, which is close to 4 stories high, right? You have a little bit more than 10 feet a lot of times in 1 story, but that's what that old average used to be, right? Was the 10 foot per story, kind of a generalized statement. And so these were very tall, very flimsy trees to some degree. Aspen grow quickly. There may have been some silver birch mixed in. I had never seen catkins grow on any aspen that I was aware of. Google wasn't aware of any aspen that put off catkins, but everything else about the plant looked like an aspen. And the horticulturist that I spoke to in Lehigh City, she's just amazing, I was told. She certainly was very helpful when I called her. And she's from the East Coast. She has so much training in trees and probably all the elements of that sort of biology, but trees being her specialty. She thought that they were all aspen. Well, I talked to her before the catkins came out, and some of the trees did not have catkins. So what I think that we probably have are aspen and silver birch. And both of them put off that root structure that I was describing. In fact, the largest single living organism on the planet is an aspen stand here in Utah called, I believe, General Sherman. Let's just take a quick peek because I don't want to be speaking out of turn when it's the state I currently live in, right? And oh my God, what if I die here? It's going to be a little rough on you guys. Okay, let's see here. I know General Sherman is a tree of some sort. I believe it's the aspen stand. Oh, goodness. Somehow that gave my Google a hard time there. That's really weird. Okay, General Sherman. Why isn't it giving me an AI overview? Wait, there we go. Sequoia and Kings. Oh, no, that is not. Okay, there's a largest. It has a name as well, and I was worried I was getting it wrong. Pando Aspen Grove. I thought it had a different name. But anyway, this is the largest living organism that we know of on the planet. It is a massive structure of a plant. Beautiful, glorious, so, so beautiful. I'm from Colorado originally, which is where that competition probably comes in, right? But the aspen are prolific in both Colorado and Utah as you approach the northern areas especially. So down south in Utah, it gets really, really dry. There are aspen in southwest Colorado as you approach like Durango and things like that. And it is a very prolific tree. So wish us luck as we begin the very long battle of taming these trees. And so where I was speaking of saving money, right? Free, low cost, I look at that as every part of my life. Not just the larger grant and grant-like opportunities that we're trying to go through here, but in just saving money in general, right? So we're going to take these 15 or so aspen, we're going to take almost all of the material that came from cutting down these trees. As we talk about in my community all the time, I'm going to be utilizing something called Hugel Culture, and we've had a couple of new people join. I'm kind of just talking, guys, because there were no questions. So if you have questions, please let us know. You can raise your hand or just unmute your mic and interrupt me. Feel free. I don't have a problem with it. All right. And so we're going to take these 15 trees, with the exception of 2 large branches of just mostly small stems and the leaves and things. There's 2 large piles that we're going to let them haul away. We're going to use the smaller branches and leaves, like what they're hauling away. We're going to have at least 2, maybe 3 piles of those, big piles, like bigger than my Kia Seltos car. It's so funny that I drive a car that I can adequately describe the getchipdrop.com, which is a free service to get wood chips delivered. We've talked about some things in my community to be aware of as far as getchipdrop.com. You are allowed to request to not have different types of plants as a part of it, things like that. So one of the topics that came up that I hadn't considered, I would hope that someone would not be so unkind as to include termite-ridden trees that they had felled. But I will definitely be adding that to my list, as well as hazelnut, laurel, I believe beech, eucalyptus, juniper, and I forgot to say no rose bushes, because thorns on rose bushes take longer than most other organic plant material to biodegrade. Those suckers are hard, and they put a lot of rosebush clippings into our wood chips. So we're about getting to the point where when I come in out of the garden, I don't have to pull rose bushes, the pieces of rosebush and the thorns out of my soles of my feet or my shoes. It's not been the most fun element of getting free wood chips. However, they were free, and they are not negative for the soil. There were no beech or juniper laurel, those types of trees. They put off different kinds of chemicals that protect them, including sometimes from other plants. Marigolds, things like that also do it. And those are called companion plants to a lot of plants because the types of chemicals they put off don't really harm most other plants. They can harm a few. There are definitely some plants you don't want to put next to something like a marigold. But for the most part, they'll protect your other plants as well as themselves by the chemicals they put off. Black walnut is one of the worst for keeping almost all other plant life from growing in its chemical reach. And so you definitely don't want that as wood chips for your yard unless you have an area that you just don't want any plant life. That would certainly help to eliminate any plant life. Go out and find some black walnut wood chips. I don't know if you can do it. It might be a little difficult. So we're going to take all of that, those smaller stems and the leaves will primarily be used for compost. The medium-sized logs that we'll cut up, most of those will go into the berms that are here on our property. Again, this is something that Benny knows. He's over in my other community, and maybe some of those of you who have joined now are also aware of it. But a berm and a swale are soil structures that you can build into a property to help that property retain water. And so the berm is a little mound and the swale is a little dip, all right? And they can be larger. I've seen them large enough that when the water's good in the area, even in my little hometown in Cortez, Colorado, there was a YouTube video I watched of a lady doing this. And I can't help but wonder if my cousin-in-law helped to create her swales. She had practically a river going on her property when this video was filmed, a portion of it. It was just glorious to watch, knowing how dry my hometown is. We are by some rivers. We're not nearly as dry as the southeast corner of Utah. Many of you are probably familiar with Moab. That's where Moab is. Very, very dry. Cortez, Colorado is a higher desert. I would believe Moab is probably a high desert as well, but it is higher and closer to the foothills and mountains. We even have a single little mountain chain with just some little small foothills and one good size, I don't even know if it's technically called mountain, but we call it Ute Mountain, and it's sacred to the Ute tribe because it looks like a native chief lying on his back with his hands crossed over his head, the regalia for his headdress, and it's quite visible, this structure. And so it's very important to their culture. And all of that helps to have more moisture in my area than the corresponding corner of Utah. And so soil water retention is a big, big deal over here in the West. And the Four Corners is absolutely one of the best examples of that. The only better example is Needles, California. You know, lots of us all kind of compete. Nevada's really, really dry. Needles, California is sometimes the hottest spot on earth. Crazy, isn't it? Right here in our own country. And I believe up near the Great Lakes, there is a spot that can be the coldest spot on earth. Wow, right? There is a lot of variety in our country. So those past the Continental Divide and past, like, say, Texas and Kansas, Ohio, start getting into a lot more water. Our hearts being, of course, with those in Texas and also a little bit in New Mexico with these floods. So devastating, such a large loss of life, almost unheard of in these days, right? Such a tragedy. We do have resources for members in those situations, no matter what part of our country it may be. We have resources for those that have been in severe weather. I hope everybody is safe. So when we're talking about still saving that money, I'm just filling the air. Again, a couple more people have joined us. If you have a question, I would love to answer it for you. These aspen that we've cut down, the parts that are not for compost, the parts that are not for the Hugel Cool Tour, where they become, as one YouTuber, I believe it's the Millennial Gardener, I heard him describe Hugel Cool Tour as water batteries. And I thought that was just such a brilliant way to explain it. Hugel Cool Tour is from one of the Norwegian countries I can never remember. And a little gentleman was given a very small part of the property to make into his own garden. And he learned how to use it very well because it was a very rocky, kind of unfriendly little patch of ground where he was just a small child and he was given this patch to be his own garden. And he learned that it was great for strawberries, and he had the best strawberries in his town and all this cute little stuff. And so he learned very young about niche or microclimates, right? Like the strawberries wouldn't have grown as well on any other part of that property. So he took that knowledge and continued going, and there is a form of water retention that has been used on these very steep hills, right? Like they use cross-country skiing and skiing as a mode of travel because they have these huge slopes, and they don't retain water very well, obviously. Many times you'll have a bare mountain simply because it doesn't have the ability to retain any water and grow any plant life. And so what they would do is they would mound up these piles of very unkempt sticks and small chunks of trees. They didn't have a ton of large trees, and they would build large mounds in like a half moon kind of a shaping. And then the water coming down those slopes would catch into that, and they were able to garden then in those areas. They are doing something and have been doing something probably for millennia in Africa. Again, anyone wanting to reference any of this material, you're welcome to join my community collectively Rewilding for free. It's a going nonprofit so that we can charge nothing to everyone. It's just open to join and participate in. And there are these structures that they are using in Africa. Again, they're bringing it back. It's called a bund, and it too is a half moon shape. And there, instead, what they do, because they're talking about more flat ground, right? They just take a certain type of a tool, probably a specific type of a hoe, and it too is almost like a half moon shape. And they push the ground, they dig into and push the ground to a slight slope, just a slight slope to create this small mound, probably only about a foot, maybe a little higher, and in a half moon shaping. And they put sour gum, the examples that I've watched, they're putting sour gum, and it's called greening the strip in Africa. There's a certain, like almost a one-liner. It's their slogan, right? And they're greening this strip of Africa to try to bring back life to areas that have been depleted by human activity back as far as Rome. Rome clear-cut a lot of forests in Africa to plant wheat for their soldiers. So they're trying to regreen parts of Africa and put like a green belt between that ever encroaching now desert of the Sahara. And there are also a lot of refugees. I believe it was in Sudan. There are a lot of refugees there, and they don't know what to do. The country doesn't know what to do to help them. They allowed them to come in, but now everybody's kind of struggling, and they're trying to figure out a good solution. So since they've been already having this greening project, these refugees are being, I'm guessing, they don't really talk about this element, but they're being at least given access to these tools and the seeds to create the sour gum growth. And it is literally regreening parts of Africa. It's simply beautiful, and it provides food. I believe sour gum is probably comparable to cattails, and cattails have been called the grocery store of foraging or hunter-gathering days because they are almost entirely edible, perhaps entirely edible, don't quote me on that. And even those parts that, if they're not edible, like the leaves, they are able to be woven into flooring mats. They can be woven into mats that can be used as temporary shelters. They can be used when they're dry to both provide kindling and a fire stick, as well as the tubers being very, very edible, something that was a large staple for many, many cultures, anywhere there were cattails, really. And I believe sour gum is probably comparable. I'm guessing that the leaves and things that they don't use can probably be woven into temporary structures and floor mats and things of that nature. So it's providing food, it's bringing back life to this desolated area, and it's providing all of this forward growth. It's what they don't eat, they can sell, right? It's just this huge, beautiful picture. And so this bund is a form of soil structure along with my swales and berms. and I've added a sunken garden. Another person's just joined us. I'm kind of just filling air. Nobody had any questions. If you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and just shout it out. Don't worry about interrupting me. Or you can raise your hand if you're more comfortable with that. So I have a sunken garden, which when you lower the ground, the cold air, no matter what temperature it is, the colder air is going to sink down into that sunken garden. It gets very hot, definitely towards 100, a little bit over sometimes, mostly towards the mid to high 90s, creeping at that 100 in the hottest part here in both the Tooele and Salt Lake Valleys. Tooele, thank goodness, being just a little bit cooler. The bund, the sunken garden, because it also is going to gather all of that water. And because we've placed the swales and the berms, as well as the bund, with the already downward, very visible, but not hugely, it's not problematic anyway, it slopes away from the house, but a visible slope to our yard, all of the water that does come in when it rains, and it can cause small floods. In fact, the first year we were here, there were several main streets in the Salt Lake Valley that were completely flooded. They were little mini rivers, several of them here in the Salt Lake Valley. I don't know with Tooele exactly what they experienced at that time, being brand new to the area as a citizen. I've always gone through Utah, going to California, going to Wyoming, going to Nevada, going to Idaho, but this was my first time living here. So this all is going to help keep the water in. Then we also dug an 8 by 15 foot hole that's about 4 foot deep, and we're going to put in a submerged greenhouse called a walipini. We need to take all of that dirt, literal tons of dirt that were created, and move it out. We're going to fill our side yard in for a raised bed. I would eventually like to put an arbor in over it so that we have this glorious I'm coming over here because that's where it is. It's on our side yard, right? But it'll have a structure that goes down like an alley or a fence on a lane, something like that. And then it'll have a roof over it as well, but it won't be solid. I'm leaning towards possibly putting in, excuse me, PVC pipe over rebar just to keep costs low. I would really love to use 4x4s and lattice. That would be wonderful. Not latticed in completely, but some lattice across the top with probably more like 2x4s to support the plant life and lattices that ran across. And we will have like tomatoes, vining green beans that are red in color. How fun is that? Some loofahs, some vining roses, and it seems like there's one other plant that I intend to have on that arbor when we get to that point. So we're going to take all of that soil that was generated from digging these huge holes and make that really long raised garden bed here on the side. And then in the front yard, I've already checked, there's no restriction on raised beds here in Tooele County and Tooele City. And they just don't want things above 3 feet, something that limits visibility, right? Police officers, firefighters, any of that, they want to be able to see into your front yard. That's why you usually cannot have a 6-foot fence in a front yard, right? 4 foot is often a common, 3 to 4 feet is pretty well the standard. And so we don't want to go higher than 3 feet with our raised beds. And even with the topmost tier, because we're going to have a pretty deep raised bed to begin with, and they'll be rather large, probably at least 5 or 6 feet wide by maybe as many as 8 to 10 feet long. 2 of them. I'm really not a big fan of yards. When I was in high school, mind you, this is when temperatures weren't as high as they are today. And I was watching a movie, you know, they put those trivia facts up for you to keep you from getting too bored. One of the stats that came across the screen said that 60% of residential water usage went to arable land in lawns. And that just devastated me. That was just, in my mind, an absolute ridiculous statistic to exist. I've never been a fan of lawns since. So I also don't believe in monoculture. When you have a single type of grass and even multiple types of grass, it's still so close together that probably many pests that like grass will be able to eat at least 2 or 3 of your grass plants. When you have that monoculture, it doesn't do anything for the soil. It depletes your soil, and it allows a lot more possible pest infestation. And so that means more and more chemical intervention. However, lawns keep your yard cooler, which keeps your house cooler, which keeps more water in the soil. So our compromise will be to put these raised beds out there. And the previous owners, they wanted the yard to look nice so that someone would buy their house, which the yard had very little. I didn't really care as long as it wasn't a problem. I intended to change it radically. So, but they falsely greened the front yard by watering it 3 times a day. That was the schedule it was on when we took over the house. So what that did was wash all of the nutrients out of the soil. Our yard is so depleted now. It's really unfortunate. We have to start over pretty much from the beginning. So we've been adding broken down seaweed wrap. It was a recommendation by another YouTuber that I watch, M.I. Gardner. He's up in Michigan with Michelle Cairns. And he gets this raw, unsalted, roasted seaweed that you would use in sushi and any kind of seaweed style food that might be made. And you stick 1 sheet into a little mason jar or something of water and let it break down for at least 2 or 3 days. If it's hot, it's going to break down much more quickly, of course. I have to keep the water on it is more of a worry than having it break down. Then you take that and put that in. So you're thinking like a typical mason jar size, somewhere around there. Let it break down. You put it into your watering can, about a gallon size watering can, and then you can put it on your plants. And it's readily available comparatively. Now, chemical intervention of a liquid nature is probably going to be the most readily absorbed by your plants. However, that broken down seaweed is going to be the next best thing. And it's a little off-putting, but we have, excuse me, a chemical fertilizer that farmers use everywhere. It's called urea, U-R-E-A. And you have to go out and buy this lab-created substance. And it is essentially lab-created urine. So if you pasteurize your urine by getting it really hot, it adds a lot more nutrients than this urea that is created chemically. They're both called urea. Urine was used for millennia, probably just about since gardening began, to be quite real about it, as a natural fertilizer for the soil. And so if I don't want to use lab-created chemical intervention, because we're chemicals ourselves, our bodies are made up of chemicals. Everything has a chemical component to it. You could break it down into its chemical structure. And so that's another way of also saving costs. And so anyway, still continuing with saving the money with the aspen, we're going to take the large trunk portions and use that on this raised bed for the side yard. It's not going to go as high. We may place an additional mound on the top, but it's just a thin one, a foot or 2 in width, that runs perhaps the whole thing, but maybe is broken up so that you could easily walk through it and around it in order to harvest anything. And it will create this nice, cool structure where we'll be able to grow cool weather plants longer. It will shade them. Things that really don't like all of this hot western sun that just pours down here in the summer will be shaded naturally. And it will also increase the amount of land that we have to grow anything with. Every little structure that we raise up or dig down in creates additional arable land for plants. So it's really quite fun. With the exception of the Wally Peony, to a degree, we will increase it. We'll have shelving in there and a tree. We're going to put, I believe, probably a Meyer lemon tree. I wanted to do an avocado tree and then have our front porch enclosed with the lemon tree, which can be smaller than the avocado tree. It just isn't practical. Our front porch is just too small, and it would be way too big of a venture to try to increase it for a single tree. So I'm down to one more tropical weather style tree that I can grow. My husband really wants figs, but he's the only one that likes figs, and we use lemons all the time in our cooking. Lemon tree it probably will be. And then we'll have shelving, as I said, along the wall, in the middle. And I'm also intending to leave portions of the wall open. We'll bring the actual wall of the Wally Peony, the sunken greenhouse, in, probably 5 to 6 inches. And then I'm going to fill that with some, yes, of the garden soil that was dug up, as well as different components that people use in various soil mixes. And we're thinking we're probably going to finish it off at the top to close it in at the ground level where some other will come up, right? We're going to, again, always saving money. This is not the most expensive structure one could add onto their property, of course, but it is not a cheap endeavor. And so we're going to get windows that have been torn out of homes and reclaimed. And yes, I'm a little bit wild and crazy. I love their colors. It will probably look quite comparable. And that will be the portion that comes up above the ground. Will be in reclaimed windows. Here you see they even have this reclaimed door that's got the 2 nice glass panels on it. I would love to find a reclaimed door like that. That won't be the whole structure though. The part that is underground obviously doesn't need glass. It needs more structure in case we do have earthquakes in Utah. I've been through a pretty decent one. It caused the location that my husband was working to then, it was a metal building, right? Like these large metal buildings. And his boss was outside him, 2 of the manager, assistant manager, and 2 workers are all in the plant with the manager being outside. He said it looked like the building folded in half. My husband was in there, crazy, cylinders flying all around, just wild. And so it was a pretty good size earthquake. I don't believe it did any major damage. It was structurally sound still, the metal building. Of course, that company didn't follow the rules, so hopefully they are right and it's still structurally sound. It certainly didn't cause any problems while my husband was still there, but it's something to consider when adding something like this, where we've dug down 4 feet into the ground and have these really long walls on both the east and the west side. The shorter sides being, like I said, somewhere around 8, 15, 8, 15. We need to make sure that that wall on each side doesn't come crumbling down. But we're going to leave portions of it open so I can fill these sides in, put a hinged lid on the top, so when more is needed to get added into there, it'll settle, the plants will use the nutrients, pulling out the roots. That's all used material. Of course, sometimes the roots will be left in there to decompose, right? Just depends on the type of plant that it is. We'll have to add more material down to those side open walls between the actual earth and the structure that we put in to keep the wall from ever crumbling down. And so these will just be 1 by 8, I believe is what they're called, maybe 2 by 8. We've had a few more people join in. I'm kind of just filling space. Country talk, nobody had any questions. I would love to answer your questions. Feel free to just shout them out. Raise your hand if you're more comfortable doing that, right? You think we have a couple people unmuted, and as you're not asking questions, I'm going to go ahead and mute you there just so the background noise doesn't come through. But if you have a question, just unmute and shout it out, like I said. So those need to be like 1 or 2 by 8, and they'll be on 4 by 4s that are mounted in concrete as the initial bottom structure. There will be at least 4 4 by 4s, maybe 2 at each corner point. I think my husband is planning 2, and probably 1, at least 1 in the middle, maybe even as many as 3 in the middle and on the other side, and probably 2 where we have the door, and maybe 1 in the middle on the back, right? So with those 2 4 by 4s and the 1 or 2 by 8 panels, with a few open rows in each of the longer sides, perhaps in the back side that does not have a door in it, put one or two of those open panels, and we're just going to play with it and see if that's strong enough. If it doesn't end up being strong enough, we'll have to take that part out and fill it in with cinder blocks. And then we can put the panels back up as well, and we'll leave lines of the cinder blocks throughout all of it open with the holes facing out. Most of them will be flat, you know, as you would normally see a cinder block, just a flat line. The others will be turned to their sides so that there are holes accessing that created soil structure so that the whole structure is capable of producing vertical growth, growth on the walls, growth in the middle with vertical growth with the shelves. Oh, it's just going to be so much fun. It's going to make it so that we can start things earlier, of course, carry things longer, grow even through pretty much the entire winter. We'll move our compost heap into the Wally Peony. That will put off heat as it decomposes. And if you structure your compost pile right, you don't have a bad smell. It's just continuously creating excellent soil for your garden, and it can put off that heat to heat something like a greenhouse, or as ours is a submerged greenhouse, which has extra capacity to store heat and cool in the summer. With it all being windows like that, we'll be able to open up the whole thing. Just about on the northernmost wall, I would probably like to do something like adobe or something like that, and I want to put some reclaimed glass bottles or marbles or glass globes or something in it so that you have that pretty light that will still come through. Even though it's from the north, it'll still just look so pretty. We may think about eventually putting some stained glass or something into part of it. Oh my gosh, I love color. It's so much fun. And so with all of those, we're going to save so much money, right? The raised beds in the front, they're going to go up to 3 feet. And so what that means, the base structure, as I said, somewhere between maybe 4 to 6 feet wide by as much as 8 to 10 feet long. 2 of them, they will then have another structure on top of that will also have very tall support so that you're still getting close to 2 feet of soil that's there. And then another one in the middle, which we'll keep with low plants, right? We'll keep the structure at 3 feet, and then we'll keep lower plants on the top instead of taller plants, as maybe you might do for even visual effect. We may throw in a few just for the visual effect that doesn't really block the view. And that will increase so much of our arable ground that we have for plants. Now, trying not to fight with the city, I would actually like to cooperate with the city in a variety of ways that include a lot of grant and grant-like opportunities. I did hear back from Saetse, and she is the Natural Resources Conservation Service contact that I have. The sprinkler lines that we're going to put in, while they are technically, yes, irrigation, and they will even be for a small amount of producing, meaning that I'm making money off of the produce that I grow here on the property, I need to put out $1,000 worth of recorded sales for produce off of this land to be considered for certain grant and grant-like opportunities as a farmer, right? I actually intend to maybe some on this property, if we can get to that point. We have so much to do just with the soil work. We may have some quail, possibly rabbits, and if we can, we're going to get an endangered species of tortoise. And of course, those would not be anything but pets. Be aware, if you take on something like a tortoise, these guys live for like 50 years. So it's a big, big commitment, right? These endangered tortoise, you have to go through channels and prove that you're capable of providing the correct habitat and do all of this. And we just think it would be a lot of fun. My husband and my children would really like to have caged terrarium, like tank style critters, chameleon, or one of these beautiful reptiles. I don't do caged creatures. I think it's just mean. I've even taught my dogs to stay in our front yard that doesn't have a fence so that they really are not going to feel caged in, and they have a large backyard where they can just go and be out without any supervision. My cat is free. He's able to go and wander. I've taught him not to kill the birds. He very rarely kills birds. The second to last property that we were on before here was an exception. The pigeons practically flew in his mouth. What was the cat supposed to do? But cats are devastating to their environment. They kill for pleasure. They don't always kill because they're hungry. They kill because it's fun, like some of the weasels. And they kill bugs. They kill small mammals. They kill birds. They'll kill rodents. Or excuse me, they'll kill reptiles. They are devastating. A house cat is devastating to the environment that it lives in. My cat never really liked to kill the bugs. I was grateful for that. My previous cat did. That was before I was as worried about the bugs, right? Cats lived for quite a while, so that was a couple decades ago. And I didn't really teach him not to do that. I did teach him to stay away from the birds. He had been an indoor cat. We had been living in like California and Nevada, places where there was a lot of traffic, and I wasn't comfortable with letting him be a free cat, but I would take him out on a leash, right? How funny is that? Our across the street neighbors, the little girls over there, they're so cute. They're like getting ready to enter their middle school type years, and they have a cat that they take out on a leash. I love it. I have never seen anyone else take a cat out on a leash other than my own poor cat that was suffered through that. He did eventually, when I got back to a more country, a slower paced environment, he got to go out and be free as well. He tended to stay very close to home though, because several years he wasn't allowed to be out without being on that leash. So those are all of the things that we're going to be doing here, and another person has joined. I'm just kind of filling time. Nobody had any questions. I've been doing a lot of country style activities, and I just always have, I don't know if I could run out of things to talk about the outdoors, right? That's why my secondary business is all about agriculture and gardening, outdoor survival, hiking, backpacking, all of these beautiful thoughts, alternative health structures such as herbs, or all these just beautiful things that are the outdoors. I could probably talk for the rest of my life. So never difficult for me to fill space. Does anybody have any questions about any of the things that I've talked about? Swales and berms, I didn't quite fully explain. The dip, right? If you want to always place it on the slope. So you place it at the bottom of a slope so that all the water runoff that comes because of that natural slope will be captured by the swale. I think of it as like a swell in the ground, like a wave. So you dig down for your swale and you use that earth to mound up. So it really is like a wave in the ocean. That dip catches the water. The additional soil of the mound, especially by adding that Hugild's culture, those water batteries, those little logs, you do want to make sure there's room to grow. One of the things that the Millennium Gardener talked about, and I had started seeing on YouTube videos, and I just thought, what the heck are they doing? People wanted it to be nice, right? So they were stacking the logs like they were stacking it for their storage for winter. Where are your plants going to put their roots down? Just crazy. They are supposed to decompose slowly. That's why if you break them up in wood chips and you put them on the top, it's an excellent ground cover as long as they're all good wood material, like we've talked about, right? No black walnut, no juniper, laurel. I do think there might have been a little bit of juniper in this mix, but I didn't ask for there not to be because it's just such a common tree around here, and it's really one of the lower ones on that list. So black walnut's the worst. Eucalyptus, linden might be bad too. For some reason that just popped into my head, but don't quote me on that one. The juniper, laurel, and thorns from rose bushes. Ouch, I promise you, after having dealt with it, I know very much how bad it is. I actually have a little meme that I can share with you all about what not to allow in your wood chips if you use getchipdrop.com, and I'll leave that link for you as well. Okay, let me get in here to the right spot. I think this is where I found it. No, where did I find it? I found it for class the other day. let's just go and look at it, and I'll probably be able to find it, but if I can't, I can screenshot it from my community, as I just shared it with them last week, this week even maybe. I think it was in the home page here. Give me just a second, guys. If I don't find it right away, I'll search it, but it should be right here towards the top. Now, it looks like everybody's been in here sharing some great material, so let's go to the overall rewilding community, and we'll search for it. Type compost, and then I have to scroll a little bit, so bear with me. There it is. All right. So these are the things you do not want in your compost. Black walnut, the number one. Eucalyptus, juniper, laurel, beech, holly, oak, and sweet chestnut just aren't the best. They aren't like these up here where they're putting out chemicals to prevent plant growth. They are high, well, lignin is, so they do have some. They're just not as bad as these. So lignin is one of those chemicals that plants put out to protect themselves from other plants. It probably protects them from pests as well, but it, in this case, will deter other plants. And they're low in nitrogen, which is one of the three. Nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, I want to say, NPK, are their chemical elements for sure. And let's just go and take a quick peek so that you can see that. All you need to do is just type NPK. Oops, yeah, I did. Okay. Thought I typed too many letters for a second there. And let's just go let's say fertilizer, and then if we need to, break components. I know it's potassium and nitrogen, but I can't remember if it's for oh, and all. Let's do this. That'll work better. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Yeah, I was pretty sure, but I didn't want to be wrong. It's a very, very important topic when talking about plants. And so this has a low nitrogen content. The nitrogen really provides the green part of it, obviously, in your plants. Chlorophyll, all these things, necessary nitrogen. Then here at the bottom, as I mentioned, thorns can take years to decompose. Not recommended. I'm going to be dealing with them for literal years. However, they're working down into the wood chips, and it isn't that bad as it comes to almost a year after starting to put them down and start walking on them as things. In about a year, they'll work into the rest of the wood chips, but they won't break down for several years, maybe as many as 5. In the wrong conditions, it probably can take longer. So I'll try to find this. If not, I'll just screenshot this for you guys and share that. In fact, let's just do that so that I can notify you all right now. And I'll copy this in here for you as well. That's weird. Oh, it's just my toolbar is covering it. Really. Oh no, but now my toolbar is going to be in the way. All right, let me do this again. You guys can't even see it, but it's going to ruin the picture if I can't get it out of it. All right, here we go. Now, let's get back to where we were and share that with you all, as well as the text. We'll notify so everybody gets a chance to see that. And I'll also add Get Chip Drop in the comments, another resource that we talked about, and one I need to renew my request in. I have a need of wood chips, even with all this material. The tree service that we're getting the wonderful price from to cut these trees down doesn't provide chips. They generally haul it off for you, right? That's a part of the service, but I don't want it hauled away. I would love it if they could chip some of it up for me. They're not able to. We're just going to take it all in logs and branches and stems and leaves. Not a problem. We can definitely use it as is. We need more wood chips. We'll need some here. Our neighbor is also pretty much going to let me just play with his yard with respect to his model trains that he has in his backyard. He is just the cutest little character. I love having him as a neighbor, and he's already talked about it. And if he's going to let me design his garden, he would like to be able to cut a hole in our fence between us in the backyard, and he's going to have his train come in and go around in my garden as well. And of course, for my YouTube channel and things like that, it'll just be excellent content, and I just think it's so adorable. My husband loves trains. He loves model trains. It's just a great situation. So as we go through the years, you guys, of course, will be able to hear about that if you're interested as well. Going to be tons of fun. So here you have that getshipdrop.com. Make sure I copied it, and we'll place that into the comments for you. It is a free service. You put in all of your information. You need to provide a picture. They like it if you can provide 2 possible drop sites. I've only ever been able to provide 1. Now, when we're going to have it on the neighbor's yard, technically they could put it kind of anywhere, but I'm going to ask them to put it kind of in the middle so it's easier to spread out. And then we'll just take the little bit that we need as we need it, but the majority of it will go to his front yard. And we need another one to go over his entire backyard. They used to have grass and plants and all that. They had a huge weather storm that picked up a lot of the water from the Salt Lake and brought it here and rained it down on the plants, especially at the end of the neighborhood where they're not as protected because we're just in open land, right? It's degraded by human use, but it's never been developed. It's just completely open over here. And there was nothing to help protect the yards of these houses right here at the base. And it devastated them. And then right after that, they had an infestation of grasshoppers. I don't know if it got to the point where they were calling them locusts, right? Because locusts happen when there's such a large population of grasshoppers that they actually kind of morph into a different creature. Let's see where our time is. We're almost out of here. And so this happened in the Dust Bowl kind of an area. This was part of some of what caused that effect. And grasshoppers to locusts, let's just say, okay, so why do, that'll give us more towards the answer. Locusts are grasshoppers that change their behavior and appearance when they are in high densities. They actually become more visible to their predators because they are in such huge quantities that if they stayed in those quantities, they would just eat all of the earth until there was nothing green left and most everything would die. So their actual own biological trail, we'll say, has created this mechanism within their species that if they become too prolific, they become more identifiable. There are other elements within it, but when you hear about locusts, they're essentially grasshoppers, but there's so many of them that they have turned into almost a different species. It's quite incredible. And so they're also down here for you folks. Those grasshoppers came in, whether they turned into locusts or it was just a really bad infestation of grasshoppers. And further devastated this area. So our backyard was essentially dead soil. There were a few weeds trying to grow out there, some actual grass that was still left on our little niche side backyard over here. And it was dead for the rest of it. There was some very hardcore kind of scrub desert plants that had established over here because they'd never even tried to do anything with it. Maybe from the beginning, it looks much more natural. And unfortunately, that is where we needed to tear in for our Walipini. And being with limited space, it wasn't something I could have left like that, even had we not done the Walipini. But it still wasn't very good soil. Desert soil is rough, right? There's not a lot of plant decomposition to increase the nutrients that are available. That's the whole cycle. Like when they clear cut the rainforest to put up pasturage, if they clear cut them and left all of that wood material there, the leaves and the pieces, along with the roots that are still there when they cut it down, and the stumps that are underground and things like this, it would have not been what it was, but it would have come back and been another lush something. They took all of the nutrients. The nutrients of the soil are largely stored in the canopy as well as within the soil if you have a properly functioning ecosystem in any given region. The nutrients, it's a continuous cycle of using the nutrients in the plants dying and decomposing and returning the nutrients. And it just continues on if left alone to do what it should. And so when you clear cut things and you take those nutrients away, you have completely depleted what's left. And so that's what you see down in South America, where they've clear cut all of these rainforest areas and then used it for pasture. They depleted what was left in the soil, and then it's barren. And you have to have intervention for it to turn back into a healthy, viable ecosystem again. It's very devastating. So we're going to take all of this wonderful nutritive material from these trees and turn it into structures, which will eventually decompose back into the ground, or put them right into the soil to slowly decompose, or broke down in our actual compost heap so that it decomposes quite rapidly. And it saves us a ton of money. It's much better for the land. While aspen and silver birch are native, I don't know if silver birch is native to this area or not. Aspen certainly is, but not to this elevation. They were planted trees in a residential area. The thought there, I just don't understand it. Anytime I see aspen in somebody's yard, I'm like, oh my gosh, you probably paid money to put that in there and it's just going to cost you money. Root structure is terrible, horrible. What did you do to yourself? Well, we knew when we bought this that it was going to be a problem. However, now we're going to take those beautiful, beautiful trees. It was so hard to agree to have them cut down and turn them into something that continuously benefits the property here. A lot better for every element of the story, from fiscal to not forest, but environment, micro. So each yard, to a degree, is its own niche or microbiome. There will be parts that do have different levels of sun, moisture retention, different types of sun. If you get a lot of, here on the western side of the country, if you get a lot of easterly sun and less westerly sun, your plants are going to love you. If you're baking all the time in the western sun and you don't even ever get the morning sun in the east, your plants are going to really struggle. And each property will have different elements of all of these things to be their own little niche elements on your property. But you can look at your property as its own micro environment, where you have the ability to enhance the place that you live, right? Even if it's a windowsill in your kitchen window, if you're a little patio on your apartment, you can have some sort of life in the ground, right? I hope you all had a lot of fun. I definitely would have loved to answer some questions. I hope I didn't bore anyone. And again, I would love to see you join my free community if you're interested. I'll just throw that into the comments as well.
Hey, Sabrina, we do have a chat. We do have a question in the chat.
Oh, do we, Miss Tammy? Thank you. I'll try to rock it out. I have to get off so that you guys can do Lesko Trio.
Cool beans.
Right? So as you can see, obviously, Miss Tammy loves these lives because she's trying to increase mine when she's having to go be committed to another one immediately after. That's just how much fun it is to hang out with you guys. All right, so now, oh, did I get Chip Chop in there? I think I might have forgotten. Let me place that in there for you as well. And then we'll grab that question really quick and try to rock that out. And then we'll shut down and be immediately followed by Miss Tammy, Miss Ethel, and Miss Amber, TEAT with the Lesko Trio. Okay, and let's take a peek at that question. Could you just read it to me,